Good evening to you, listeners and viewers of TDN Media, and in particular, those of you who tune in for this week in interview. A very warm Wednesday night. Good evening to you. I hope you've been having a good week. And this, of course, going is the highlight, and then we take it down to the weekend, and that you can have a weekend of resetting. Whether what you do to reset is to go and enjoy yourself or to relax, whichever one it is. I hope you have a good weekend coming up. So this is Anthony Drago. I'm the host and guide of this week in interview, which is a program that every week we spend about an hour. Sometimes we stretch it and you indulge me and we go an hour and a half. On rare occasions, we've gone 2 hours and you've stayed with us through those 2 hours. So thank you. I always appreciate your presence, your participation. Sometimes we get so much participation in the comments, and we love that because it means that we get a chance to address live the questions and your thoughts and to share them and so on. And that makes the program really interesting. So in Dominica, our Jams radio carries this weekend interview live on DigiPlay channel 59. Likewise, radio online, SBE radio online in the Toronto market, TMG radio talk global, global talk and music with our brother Angelo Allen carries this weekend interview as well. And we can be found on the various platforms, uh, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, of course, and we have our own TDN TV.net where you can see it live. And if you're doing something where you need your eyes, you don't need the distraction, you can go TDNradio.net and you can listen to us without having to, if your eyes are otherwise engaged. So go on there and comment, like us, subscribe. There are other wonderful programs on TDN. So I would like you to just really subscribe and make TDN your listening platform. We have great programs besides this week in interview. And what we do on this week in interview is to just have conversations with folks who are worthy to be on the show because they have experienced so many things in their lives, in their careers, in their professions they've achieved. They have interesting thoughts and ideas. They've written a book. They are artists, just regular folks like you and I who have something to share. I get the great privilege to have those conversations with those folks and share those conversations with you. And it's just wonderful that way. If you 2 Wednesdays ago, I had this brilliant conversation with two young people from in Dominica, two young professionals, Gary Ogis and Janelle Brisbane. They are at the tip of the spear in terms of conservation and preservation and raising the alarm of the seemingly unplanned development that's taking place in the once development. The word development is such a misnomer in that context. And right after we had them, that weekend we had a tropical trough, not even a storm, just a trough that dumped some rain on Dominica, and we saw just horrible results: loss of topsoil, land slippage, all of those things, and in the north and northeast of Dominica, especially in the Kalinago territory, we saw a lot of folks lose their livelihood in terms of their farms from landslides, and some folks lost their homes. Their homes slid off their foundation over the edge, and it was really sad to see the community is still reeling from that incident. And by the time we come to the end of tonight's program, I have some information to share with you if you want to assist. I have the account information for the Kalinago Council, and we will share that with you if you wanted to make a monetary contribution. Or I guess we can also send message to the council to find out how, if you want to make a contribution in kind, you will be able to do that as well. But tonight, my guest on this weekend interview is a very distinguished gentleman. He's a former prime minister of Dominica. He's the surviving member of the original cabinet. But when you see him, you're not going to believe that because he's so youthful and vibrant and full of life. It's almost unbelievable that he is part of the original cabinet when Dominica became independent in 1978. Of course, you must know who I'm talking about by now. It's no one other than Mr. Oliver Seraphin. He's been on here before, and every time he's on, I get so many feedback that saying you have to bring him back. You have to bring him back. He has so much to say, and I'm so proud and honored to be in that position to do that because not only I get to have a conversation with this very accomplished gentleman who has a lot of knowledge about Dominica and how we evolve into where Dominica is right now. But we also do our programs is recorded. Our programs are recorded, and so my conversation with Mr. Albert Seraphin is actually creating a living and durable record of his knowledge, not just historically, but also his perspective on how we can really improve the plight and the options for Dominicans. So let me give a very warm welcome back to you, OJ, Mr. Seraphin. Welcome back to this weekend interview. As usual, I'm honored and it's a pleasure to have you on.
Always a pleasure to be on your program. I think that's the third program,
That's
is it?
number three. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
I've
blessed.
becoming I've becoming very much a part of your program. Identification of persons that you think can contribute to the knowledge bank that we need. Because I believe one of our uh, gentlemen of renown did say that if you do not know the history, then you do not have the root, and therefore the plant will die.
Yep.
And we need to have information. But I'll start off on a very humble note. I'll say that if my people who are called by my name would humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, will I hear from heaven, forgive their sins, and heal their land. It seems to me that it is worth mentioning that without sounding too overly sentimental and too sensitive to persons who do not have belief in a creator, I'm suggesting that what is happening in Dominica seems to give me the impression that we need more prayer time, you know? We need more connection with Almighty God so that we can pray into the power of the word and ensure that our country is not under the opposed forces that seems to stifle the people from talking. There's a conspiracy of silence and a moral crisis, I believe. And so, as you mentioned, Gary Auguste, and you did mention Janelle Brisbane, who was on your program. I remember in one of the interviews that we had, I may have mentioned, and I believe I did, that the absence of youth, the young people, taking up their mantle because of the social revolution that took place, that have taken place in Dominica. And I'm saying that there was a social revolution because you, Mr. Drago, would know what your grandparents were suffering from, the lack of roads and the lack of certain opportunities to be going to high schools. And now you are a university graduate. I mentioned that in one of the interviews, that we have seen a transformation of the social class because of the indication to us that those who came from what we refer to as country bookies have now become our doctors, lawyers, engineers, and so on. So when Janelle and Gary's have been taking the forefront, I got inspired by their presence, by their involvement, by the strength of their resource capacity. And I am very dismayed when people like Nazio Fontaine, who had virtually gone silent, gone into his own inner world, seeking peace wherever he could find it, to have come up and decided to stand up for a cause and to be treated so horribly by people of lesser capacity, persons who have not made any contribution to the name Dominica in the international world, and to attempt to ensure that this gentleman is treated as if he was some evil being that is attempting to remove and dismantle the uh, the possibility of an international airport in Dominica, which is two totally different situations. The international airport is one aspect, the protection of the environment is another. And maybe I would take the opportunity to dive straight into what I believe is an important resource that we have, which is water. And so I too had had my experience way back somewhere about 2006 or thereabout. There was a client of mine. In fact, they came from the church group out of Utah, and they were able to amass through their connections very affluent people to come to Dominica and have meetings with Mr. Shillingford, I believe it was, who was in the director or the manager of the WASCO. And we had an MOU prepared for the government to invest the $50 million into the development of our water resource for export as a joint venture with the WASCO. And then there was also an opportunity too, at the same time, for this very same group, a humanitarian exercise, that we would have had the expansion of the port leading in front of um, the St. Alphonsus Church. And they would be able to do major transfer of cargo of mega tankers uh, or boats that would then deliver their goods and then be transferred to Guadeloupe, Martinique, Antigua, St. Lucia, etc. And this went to the government, and they, unfortunately, in a very rather strange way, that project was not processed through in a normal way. And there's a story behind that, which I will probably leave for some other time, because I'm not here to deride anybody or to ensure that any bad name is alluded to certain people. But there was an individual who represented the government who made a claim, a demand, which my investors felt was unconscionable and therefore lost interest. I'm saying so to say that in my research in water, I discovered that the claim that Nazio and, of course, the other two young people were trying to get at is the protection of the waterways. And I come from a background of also some interesting aspects where, as a minister of agriculture in 1977, I was the minister that brought forward the legislation for the Northern Forest Reserve,
Oh, you
the
were.
very same reserve that these young people are fighting to retain and conserve.
Wow.
And what I must say is this: every administration, every minister and or prime minister of a country must create something that has a permanent value to incoming generations. And so when I heard the voices of these young people and others, who were also involved, I mean, it's worth mentioning that you had Annie Richards, who
Annie
came from
Edwards.
sorry, Edwards, who
Hmm.
came from a very professional CV where she worked at the highest level of planning. And you had the very same thing with Juliet Tong Shellingford, who also had the capacity to have served at the planning division at a very high level. And you had Afi Martin, who was a minister of agriculture and was in fact an activist. Among them too was has to be mentioned is the gentleman David Shagai, who happened to have been uh, who suffered as a result of the activity of the potential mining in the area where he had purchased his property. So we have to say this, that such persons who were involved with the intention to bring attention to the difficulties that could arise out of the destruction of the environment. I have been in your interviews, one of which I did mention, and I think you'll recall that I did say that Christopher Maxime, who was the chief forestry officer, and I had a meeting, a breakfast meeting, and he, in his very casual way, very joker's way, I would say, he said, "I know you're a politician, but do you know that what we are attempting to do with the protection of the environment will not give you votes, but you will do it for generations to come?" So it would be amiss of me, really, and that's why I'm talking now. It's amiss of me to not lend my voice to a situation that in 1977, the Northern Forest Reserve became a matter for the Parliament to make a decision on making sure that we protect that environment, and to see it being callously treated for the mere commercialization of the possibility of rocks for the airport seems to me to be a direct opposite of what Maxime thought that we're attempting to do for posterity. And so I stand with, and I wish to be recognized as one of those persons that take strong objection to the insinuation that those persons, professionals like Annie and uh, Miss Shillingford, Juliet Shillingford, and others, that they were doing this for political reasons. I think it's unfair to them, and I would like to support their efforts, because if we do not have a voice in the articulation of a situation that the average person on the street cannot understand, I will say this, and I will say it very strongly, that the resource upon which the effect, negative effect, could be brought to the Concord River, for which I too have a personal interest. I had a hotel there for many years. My guests would use the Concord River as a place to bathe and have fun, for picnicking, etc. Our restaurant that was most popular was overlooking the Concord River. And so my children, many of my children grew out of that environment. They all learned to swim in the Concord River, etc. I remember a gentleman called Mr. Nevins from the Carib Territory, who was very, very much an activist. He, a Kalinago leader of a kind, that probably was not chief, but he was certainly considered to be one of the leaders in the Kalinago territory. And he was one who would make a visit to my office as Minister of Agriculture, a regular situation, to make the effort to establish that some of the lands that belonged to his ancestors were taken by a Shillingford organization. And I was able, as minister, to ensure that that land was given back to the Kalinago people through Nevins right on the riverbank, higher level of Concord, just about a mile or two up the Concord River, for which today there are many houses being built there for the people of the Kalinago territory. So I have a personal interest in the matter, and for me not to speak would be unfair to the knowledge base of what the young people, like those that I've just mentioned and others, and the professionals are trying to do. We are saying that if you want rocks, find a way to get it elsewhere rather than disturb the environment. That would have such a consequential effect upon the waterways. So it's not about not wanting an airport. In fact, if you go back to Leblanc's days, there were times when he attempted to get an airport somewhere in the Pont Carce area. There was Patrick John who attempted to get an airport built. I was his minister of communications and works. And for just for me to repeat this, the incident of the building of the Kingsfield Airport came about when Patrick himself insisted that we go to the British government in Barbados, and we were able to make a strong case. And at the end of the day, the gentleman who was in charge of the British division did say that he believes that there was no need for an airport in Dominica because in the areas of Guadeloupe and Martinique, 50 miles away, there are international airports, and so did Saint Lucia and Antigua. But however, if they could, he could get an airport closer to Roseau, so he could come in for breakfast and leave at lunchtime or thereabout and go back to Barbados, he'd be happy to do so. And under my persuasion, as someone who was in the aviation business, I knew that if there was such an airport could be built. And against the interest of what Patrick was considering as his major resource need for Dominica would be the international airport. We failed to get that airport, but we got Kingsfield.
Right.
And I'll give more developments at some other stage at some other time.
Hmm.
But mark you, when I was in government, and I heard today that Babs Dyer was on a Q95 program, he spoke eloquently, but he will also attest to the fact that my government was given the airport in um, in in um, um, in
Kingsville.
Salisbury, Grand
Salisbury.
Savannah, Grand Savannah.
Okay. Hmm.
And at that point in Grand Savannah, an airport was to be built by the Venezuelans. It was approved of. There was no doubt about that, that the Venezuelans were prepared to do it. Unfortunately, the new government came in of the Freedom Party, and it was decided that because the lands belonged to H.D. Shillingford, that it would be in his better interest to have it sold as lots, which happened later on, and we lost that opportunity for that international airport. Babs Dyer, when he came in shortly after my government, was able to go to Venezuela, and he did in fact receive the authority to pursue the international airport there. So we have always been governments that came and went. In Edison James's government, the UWP, tried to do an airport. So no one is against an international airport. I think that is an unnecessary misinformation and disinformation. I think what we need to do is to explore what is in the best interest of Dominica.
How is the best utilization of Dominica's resources? And I think, OJ, thank you for that, for putting so much on the table that puts into context a lot of the issues that are currently being discussed in Dominica now. Dominica is at a point now where we have to be more deliberate in our planning. We have to be more deliberate in our decisions and our actions, because it's the only time I will agree to somebody making a statement that we are a small island, because that's the only context it makes sense. We have a limited land mass, and not only that, a lot of our land mass is very steep, and it's on the very virgin forest that we should seek to preserve. And so therefore the development area, if we were to do it in a very smart way, the areas that are open for development are quite limited. And then what that behooves us to do is to make sure that we analyze and overanalyze and reanalyze and review the decisions that we make for major projects. You from listening to you, it was obvious that the placement of an international airport has been ingrained in the psyche of a Dominican. Dominica, for whatever reason, it was sort of almost an inferiority complex to us that we did not have an international airport. And so countless politicians have dangled an international airport in front of the people, as well, vote for me. I mean, I have recordings of the incumbent leaders right now saying, "I have the plans in, you see this briefcase. I have this plan in the briefcase. If you put us back in office on Monday morning, I will be starting the international airport." And I think in our favor, we we probably lost sight of the ball, because I know everybody likes to put on the table to say that they are not against the project to build the international airport, but I am against the building of the international airport where it is currently located. I think that the cost that we're paying in terms of some of our best lands, in terms of our forest, in terms of the impact on major rivers, I think that is a cost too high for an international airport. And it's proven, because they're struggling. Up to that last tropical trough that we had, we saw the entire site get inundated with water. I believe that in 2026, 2024, whenever they started it, we could have gone back to the drawing board, and we could find a place in Dominica on the West Coast where if we needed to drive piles on the shoreline and we needed to make a raised platform with a runway and an offshoot, we could do that at a cheaper cost than breaking down mountains and doing all what we need to do. We all travel and we see major bridges that span miles over bays, over rivers, over the technology exists where we if we wanted to, we could have an airport that can take international flights without that kind of impact on the environment. But the project has started. It started against without proper consultation with the public. It started without proper environmental impact assessment. It started without true information to the people that could compare what is the value of international airport versus what is the value of what exists. And are you giving up $1 to get a 25 cents?
I
Just
would like
because,
to I would like to just enter in this because the
yeah.
question has to be value.
Uh-huh.
The value of, let's say, water coming from the Concord River, coming from the the Pequot River, as we refer to it,
And the airport is affecting Londonderry River
and so
and
forth.
all of those. Yeah.
So, but here it is. I did a research, and I think it's interesting that we do that because you see what may happen even as we speak. There may be people putting in bullets in their guns ready to fire because they seem to think that whenever someone speaks, like you've just done, about a matter of which you're concerned as a Dominican who wants the best for your country, that somehow because you don't fall in line with whatever it is that the system says that they're doing, that if you question it, that for some reason you become an enemy of the state, you know? And so what we need to do is to inform those of us who can, inform those who wish to be informed
Yes. Those who
as
wish
to
to be informed.
oh,
That's
exactly
key. Yeah.
as to what are the priorities for us. I did a research and I'll share that with you. It says that the average human being have 57 to 60% water. The
Right.
average human being has 57 to 60% water. And how many days can one live without water? The conclusion is 3 days to 4 days. What is the percentage of drinkable water in the world? Less than 1% of the world water is readily accessible and drinkable for human consumption. Now, a river like Concord at one time, we were drinking straight off that water.
Mm-hmm.
70% or 75% of the earth water, roughly 97% is salty.
Right.
The remaining 3% of fresh water is locked up in glaciers, ice caps, and deep underground. Water, the water breakdown is as follows. Salt water is 97.5% ocean and seas. Fresh water, 2.5%. Accessible lake and river water is 0.3% of fresh water. 2 billion people want to have water, short of water on a daily basis. The scarcity of water, 0.003% of total water on earth is easily accessible. 0.003% of total water on earth is easily accessible from fresh water from rivers and or lakes. Continues, over 2 billion people do not have access to safe drinking water according to the United Nations. Much accessible water is polluted, requiring the Bureau of Reclamation to monitor water quality. The majority of drinking water is too deep or frozen, making a tiny fraction available for human use, as described by the National Geographic Education Program. Water is the center of climate change, and the scarcity and water security is, in fact, the most conspicuous need on the planet today. And I'm going to say this, if water is so scarce in the world, and we have an abundance, I'm sending a challenge to the persons who have gone quiet and have gone silent about various aspects of development that is taking its own course with nobody checking the checks and balances as to why it must be done that way or this way. Did it follow the rules? Did it follow constitutional process? Was it part of the Westminster adopted system that we had before? And people just go quiet. I'm suggesting that we must keep our eye as Dominicans on the way in which the water of Dominica will be exploited by foreign people who will come in with the deep pockets of l'argent chest to ensure that they dominate the export of water of Dominica. The water of Dominica belongs to Dominicans
Should belong to them.
and should remain so.
Yeah.
And if there is any effort, any program, any project, any idea, as was in the case of the geothermal, that people should come overseas from their Caucasian backgrounds and come to our country and take our resource, the children and the children to come will hold us responsible. And so I speak out as a former leader of the country because I believe that it is time that people remove the shackles. You know, there's a shackle of spiritual nature, you know, where people cannot talk. They're afraid to talk. And when you talk, you suffer the consequences. I will explain something like that. And that is
Okay,
the truth.
before there are two
Go
things.
ahead.
I have to take a commercial break because we passed
Yeah,
eight
go ahead.
thirty, so we can stick a pin in there. But just like in terms of where you have it on the table right now, is it's good for people to hear what is the value of what we have. It should be obvious, but to put it in context, from what you read, most people cannot survive more than 3 days without water.
Right.
And I will put it to you that there's no substitute for water. And we have some of the best tasting and cleanest water in the world. Yet, we have, if we look at what's happening in Debrush, the Concord River, because of what's happening there now has arsenic, mercury, and other dangerous chemicals in the water that right you go really and truly the authorities should be putting notice on the riverbanks to tell people to avoid contact with that water. That is what we've done to that major resort.
Just without really disturbing your thought
Uh-huh.
process, but here is someone here who's I have five children that grew up on that Concord River,
But no, you cannot let
drinking
your
that
children
water,
go in there.
swimming and having fun,
Exactly, exactly.
And I have had other children of mine that were brought up at that Concord village and who also swam in those rivers.
Yeah,
So I have a personal interest in this matter. And I know that your break is going to come, and I will, after your break, have something to say.
yeah. So so again you just put it right there that you were lucky that your children could enjoy bathing in the river. Your children are no longer lucky, and we did that in 2026 with our eyes open, with all the information available to us. We consciously went in there and did activities that made that river unusable. That is a big shame. But let's take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation, and to see, to encourage people. What can we do? What can we do?
Presented by Presented by
What's going on?
People say I've got a great smile. Well, I have to say, this is all thanks to the professional team at Beacon Dental Group right here in Dorchester, Massachusetts. I've got world-class dental care. Beacon Dental Group has expert and caring staff dedicated to providing the most advanced and satisfactory treatment in all aspects of oral health. Their services are designed to meet your needs and give you a perfect smile, too. General checkups, cosmetic surgery, Gemini laser service, and advanced procedures, all in a state-of-the-art facility. Call or visit Beacon Dental Group today, 1026 Blue Hill Avenue, Dorchester, Massachusetts, or call 617-282-2146 for a smile that lights the world.
Looking to promote your business, engage current customers, and reach new people? Well, look no further. From the basic presentation to a fully fledged advertisement, use your video ads to attract customers. At Man's Audiovisual Productions, we do just that. We produce videos for business and event promotions, product demo videos, animated explainer videos, fundraiser ads, and much, much more. Engage your clients and sell online. We customize the video to match your brand design. Guaranteed to play flawless on all devices, including smart TVs. Contact us at telephone number 203-690-4342 or 767-245-6238. Visit our website, mansaudiovisual.com, or email us at derekvideo@gmail.com.
Okay, welcome back, listeners, and you're tuned in to This Week in Interview with your host and guide, Anthony Drago. Tonight, this Wednesday, my guest is the Honorable Oliver Seraphin, the second Prime Minister of Dominica, He served as prime minister right after Patrick John, who took the country into independence. And he's on with us. He's given us some historical perspective, but he's also uh, talking about current and contemporary issues. And in his earlier part of the program, he really laid out to us some of his knowledge of how we evolved into the society that we are right now. He is able to put in context some of the progress that we've made and some of the regression that we've made. But when we went to the break, we were talking about, the most precious resource of Dominica. Let me put a scenario before you. I'll say, let us say I tell you I have a business and I'd like you to invest, and you ask me what is that business, and I say, well, I have this brilliant idea that I want to make make ice, and you ask me who are my customers for the ice, and I tell you Eskimos. I'm going to go to a company, and the plan is to export ice to the Eskimos. You would tell me that I'm crazy, right? But I put it to you that we have an equivalent scenario where we are in Dominica and we have millions of fresh drinkable water that flows into the ocean on a daily basis. But do you know that there's more imported water selling in Dominica than there is water that is produced in Dominica? You know that even though we have some of the most pristine water in Dominica, people are are wary of drinking water directly from their taps, and so they buy imported bottled water to drink, and so on. Isn't that equivalent to exporting ice to Alaska and to the Eskimos or whoever it is? I think that is what we are looking at in Dominica. We are in Dominica. We are drowning in water, but yet still, instead of recognizing that it's a resource, we are doing the opposite. We are seeing it as a nuisance. That when it rains, we have landslide. When it rains, the river goes into flood state, and therefore we don't appreciate it as a resource, and we choose to buy the same water from somebody else. I think if I go to Dominica and I shop my idea about doing business to export ice to the Eskimos, I should find a lot of people who would be willing to jump on board with me and go into that business because they're importing water in Dominica. But all jokes aside, and I know I am qualified to talk about water. I am a water engineer. I actually manage the engineering department at the WASCO for a number of years. And I know that for many, many years, the design criteria for the WASCO was to go into the forest reserve to establish the intake for the various water systems so that there would be minimal human activity upstream, and therefore our folks would feel comfortable and confident in putting a glass under your tap and drink the water. I know some of that perspective in terms of design has changed, but by and large, Dominica's water should be safe. So my guest, Oliver, is this Oliver Seraphin, he laid out quite nicely to us the value of water, and we were juxtaposing it against the value of an international airport. We're not saying that an international airport is of no value to Dominica. We're just saying that if building an international airport is going to have impact, if you just take one aspect, we're not even talking about the forest and all the species and the medicinal plants and everything else that's being affected, but we just take the water. The impact on water should in itself signal to us that probably need to look at a different location. And with what's happening in Debuanch, it's even more obvious. In a matter of a couple of months, you used to see most people that go to Dominica will have a video showing them jumping off a rock in Mabas Basin. No, the water, what's the cement water? The water you can advise you to advise against this water because it has tested for high levels of mercury and arsenic and other dangerous chemicals. Mr. Seraphin, you were going to continue putting this
Yeah,
in
I
into
will
context.
continue
Go
by
ahead.
saying that, we have to look at this cultural, historical perspective of where we were as a country. I am blessed to be the last surviving person, as you mentioned earlier, of the cabinet of Patrick John. But we didn't have a dictatorship. We had a democratic constitution. And so members of the cabinet and members of the party had a position to play in our independence. But in searching for independence, a number of things came up, one of which was the national song, which was composed by late Reverend W.M. Pond and put to music by L.M. Christian. And it explores this whole idea of how it is imperative that we look at Isle of Beauty, Isle of Splendor, Isle to also sweet and fair. All must surely gaze in wonder at thy gifts so rich and rare. Rivers, valleys, hills, and mountains, all those gifts we do extol. Hell feel lands, so like all fountains, getting cheer that warms the soul, giving cheer that warms the soul. Dominica, God have blessed thee with a clime benign and bright, pastures green and flowers of beauty, filling all with pure delight, and the people strong and healthy, full of godly reverent fear. May we ever seek to praise thee for these gifts so rich and rare. Come ye forward, sons and daughters of this gem beyond compare. Strive for honor, sons and daughters. Do the right, be firm, be fair. Toil with hearts and hands and voices. We must prosper. Song the call to which everyone rejoices, all for each and each for all. So it is against this that we have to say that if this is our national song, that's what led us from colonialism to having a song that represents us. All what I've said was the reason why Nazio Fountain went up to the hills.
Yep.
It's the reason why Annie Edwards and Auguste and
And
Brisbane
Afi and
and
Henry
others,
Shillingford and
and
Wave.
Henry
Yeah.
and of course Afi Martin,
Hmm.
all of whom, all of them answered that call. And so, as a member of the cabinet that accepted that song as penned by the gentleman and created in song by the icon of music, Christian, I am saying that I have a responsibility to them, as well as the cabinet members who have passed away, to song that call that we must and have to give due respect and regard to our environment and to protect the resources of our country. We need an international airport. Who says no? But the reality is that to turn around and try to make it look like you by trying to protect the environment that this song is talking about, that you somehow have an objection to the international airport is a misinformation, is disinformation, and it's clearly manifestly not a responsible position for the politicians to take. I am saying, as someone who has led the country at the worst of times, an overthrow and the removal of a leader, which led to the president disappearing in the dead of night, and who come from my death, from my sick bed, to accept the responsibility of managing a country. Then 3 months later, a hurricane came and devastated the country for which I served, for which, of course, many people have forgotten. But I'm pleased to say that in my walk through the world wherever I travel, I meet Dominicans who continuously give me credit for that which they noted was done as me being a leader of the country. So now that I am able, well and able to speak, I dare say that I tried speaking once, I believe it was in 2009, on the question of dual citizenship. And I was placed upon the understanding by the people who informed me that having taken a position that the leader of the country had a dual citizen, was a French citizen, as well as others, like Sam Raphael, for example, who was American, who went up as an independent, but gave up his citizenship. And there were others, like Bernard Wiltshire, who was English from the UWP, from Bobby Frederick, who was a Canadian from the UWP. So it was a matter where 4 or 5 or 6 persons were going up for elections in that year had not subscribed to the Constitution, for which I was part of, and Patrick was part of, and of course, Frank Barron was the chief minister. We fought against the idea that you could dismiss the Constitution and that people on both sides of the political divide had attempted to become members of parliament, although having citizenship of another country. And for that reason, I've been cast aside and blacklisted by the government, because who dare this man Seraphin to talk and cause people to think that the prime minister had a French passport, which in fact he did. So the question for me really is, I hear the people of Dominica being, well, not hear, observe how silent they are. When people like that, what's his name, Dr. Fontaine, who's considered to be a man of such excellent elegance in his occupation as an IMF professional and who went to South Sudan and so on, very well recognized, to be placed in a cell in a very dismissive way. And after 7 years, can't get his court case to be heard. And Dominicans are silent about that, irrespective of who you support. This is unacceptable, and so it's not acceptable that Edison James, a former prime minister, should be put in a cell even for a short while over a matter for which the court has not heard. And the court has been silent for more than 7 years over a number of people, and they are the heroes of people who stood up for the intention to seek the benefit of a proper program for the electoral reform. And these people, I count them for 8, 12, 16, 20, 18, about 22 of them are there in the court, going there back and forth without the ability to speak. They have been shut up, and the Constitution is very clear about it. I wish we had a longer period of time and I could make references to what the Constitution is saying. The Constitution said, we have affirmed that the Commonwealth of Dominica is founded upon the principles that acknowledge the supremacy of God, faith in fundamental human rights and freedoms, the position of the family in a society of free men and free institutions, the dignity of the human person, and the equal and inalienable rights with whom all members of the human family are endowed by their Creator. These are things that are fundamental. When I sat in as a minister of government and we were looking at language that would be used in the Constitution is very, very clear, It says a number of important things, whereas every person in Dominica is entitled to the fundamental rights and freedoms. That is to say, the right, whatever his race, place of origin, political opinions, color, creed, or sex, but subject to respect for the rights and freedoms of all of others, and for the public interest to each and all of the following, namely, life, liberty, security of the person, and the protection of the law, freedom of conscience, of expression, and of assembly and association, freedom of conscience, of expression, and of assembly and association. Repeat, freedom of conscience, of expression, and of assembly and associations, and protections for the privacy of his home and other property, and from deprivations of property without compensation. I mean, the Constitution is so strong about those matters that when I see a system that railroads itself and disapproves what the Constitution is saying by deliberately removing people from being able to express themselves, from becoming members of a group to take a position on what they think is eminent and real. And when we say Mr. what's his name, Nasif, would talk about the very same situation, he can't be arrested. But he's talking about the same thing that these people are arrested for. And so, as a former leader of the country, how can I be totally silent? One of these good days, you will hear of my passing. And then there will be this flagrant disrespect for who I was by persons who will say some great things about me. And as I speak to you tonight, I've been disregarded by the system. There are historians who have forgotten that I exist. And so life is that way, But the important thing is that there is a God who I serve and for who has made me who I am and for which I'm pleased to be talking to you tonight.
Awesome. So, so you put, you put yourself in jeopardy because you bring so many different aspects to the fore that you probably have to start coming on the program often, because each one of those each one of those you can do an entire program on. And but no, but it is extremely relevant that people understand what the constitution is and what the purpose of the constitution is and how the constitution belongs to each and every one of us, and therefore we should be familiar with it. I don't know if they teach what is the equivalent of civics in school, and what that curriculum is, but media places like TDN and people like you and I has a responsibility to use what we have control of. For now, we don't have control of the curriculum. Let the curriculum do what they choose to do with it. But we, within our own ambit of influence, need to do more of this, and to relate it back, because when it is too easy for certain folks to drag a red herring to distract people's attention, in the meantime, our resources are being denigrated. So there was activity at Debosh. There were people who were just driving by, and what they saw just assailed their senses. So they stopped and they took video and they posted it online. That's how this Debosh thing started. People just were, what is going on here? Look at the extent of excavation, blah, blah, blah. And then folks started paying attention to that. And immediately the response was, well, if you opposing Debosh, you opposing the airport, because we are over there going to look for stone to use at the airport. Obvious red herring. What a red herring is, it has strong scent. So if you drag a red herring over there, the dogs will go chase over there, and you can do whatever you want. So classic, because if we look at Dominica on the west coast, is the ideal place for quarries to get stones and rocks and everything, and there's an overabundance of that there. There are existing quarries there. What excuse can you have to go interfere with our northern forest reserve? What excuse can you have to go pollute our rivers so that you're looking for stone that is abundant in another part of Dominic? We didn't have to import it. We already have business that sells the stone, so you'd be generating employment. Because the quarry will have to increase their production. The employees are secure. You would Truck drivers would get a lot of money to transport it up to the north. You would see a boom in the economy by getting the rocks. Not only that, you will have the rocks available so you could test them. So when folks are asking, well, how do you know that that rock is suitable to use at the airport? You cannot answer because you have not gotten to the rocks as yet to even test them. But in just getting to the rocks, you're already causing so much damage. So what happens if when you get to the rocks and you test them, you find out that they're not hard enough or
But
there's not
clearly,
enough of them
but
available?
clearly, without tripping you, clearly, I mean, when you have somebody like the two ladies who have served at the highest level of the planning division, who came out and spoke, because they spoke not as recently. One of them got energized and decided, you know what, I will take this matter to another level, and I will present myself as a candidate. But prior to that, the intention was to declare what they have been having had life's experience about, their
From
education,
a professional standpoint.
from a professional
Yeah.
standpoint. And so, if when we have this conversation and people maybe at the moment as we speak making some comments, I would like to also make it very abundantly clear that the idea of rocks at Debranche is really not the issue, because one must understand very clearly that there are alternative ways in which answers for the rocks can be found
Very
in, like
easily.
you said, in other places,
Hmm.
especially in the north. And what can be stopped easily. I have, you see, one of my satisfaction, and I say so to my family members, one of my satisfaction is every time a discussion comes up, I am able to respond from a life experience. When we had the Layu uh, problem, when the mountain fell
Hmm.
and blocked the river, and then eventually the river burst through and was a damage to Layu. I happen to have been fortunate and blessed to have found a partner called Tipico, out of Martinique, to clear the roads and to have the sand in stockpile and to go in the rivers and so on and clear the rivers and do what has to be done. And after it looked like it was going to be a viable situation, I built a jetty and all of that, got a badge to carry sand from Dominica. And having done that, suddenly I got a letter from Mr. Austri, the minister, and tell me that I must cease and desist from doing any further activity in the river, whilst allowing Cadacan to do that himself, who was a
Hmm.
Frenchman. So I'm saying that they could stop me in the river so they can stop this debauched business, because if it is good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. And that is why I'm saying that people who have a voice should speak. And I'm declaring myself as someone who have a particular interest in the matter, because it's not about airports, it's not about anything else, but that the fact that people should get engaged into the discussion to protect the environment for future generations.
Because when it's lost from all of us.
Completely.
And so as we try to wrap this conversation up, I want to relate it to what happened in the Kalinago territory. The habit of not doing proper environmental assessment, the habit of weakening that institution that stands at the gate to make sure that construction is done in a safe manner, that is part of the result of what's happening, where we have heavy rains and we have catastrophe. Because, and I'm not saying that the people that who suffered losses did not submit their stuff to planning. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying subsequent to that, there was significant heavy equipment activity rehabilitating the roads. And there was no evidence of adequate EIAs done for those roads either. And
Exactly.
after the construction of the roads, we could see a change in the pattern of flow of water from the roads from how they were before. Roads were encroaching on people's water was encroaching on people's property from the roads in a way it wasn't before it was built. Now, when we disregard rules and laws and engineering practices and so on, sooner or later things are going to fall apart.
But I
It,
am
it,
saying this. I'm saying this. One of the reasons why I'm engaging in this conversation, is that when you serve in a government, you leave a legacy behind, and the intention is that you're supposed to create something for generations to come. And in the example of Chris Maxime and myself having that discussion on that lunch, when he was very amused by my passion for the forest reserve at the time, he did mention this in a way that said to me that this is for posterity,
posterity.
that's for future generations. And when I see the callous disrespect and disregard for the 1977 law of the Northern Forest Reserve, where lands were taken arbitrarily and some intention is to plant trees that are not relevant to the environment itself, that may in fact cause a change within the environment,
Yeah.
the birds that would be the Cicero parrots and other things, and the wildlife. That was a mountain where people went to get wild pigs, in recent times,
Mhm.
where you went and you did certain things like the agouti hunting and the manico hunting. Also, the mountain chicken. Those things were there, and we actually had a law that the Wildlife Act was passed by my government, by me in government as a minister, when it said that you cannot have people just arbitrarily destroying the wildlife for the use or whatever it is for cooking or whatever they're doing for the purposes of the restaurant. But there would be a 6 months in which the mating season would be approved of. That was a law passed also, the Wildlife Act. So
Mhm.
everything we did then was to protect the environment for the children of today. And so the leaders of today have to protect for the children of tomorrow. And that is where I take strong, what do I call it, consideration in coming on a program like I'm doing tonight. Because silence really is not necessarily the best way anymore.
It's complicity.
We can get complicit. In other words, my grandchildren, if they have a chance to ask me, which I have a number of them, would say to me, "Where were you? Why didn't you say something? Why did you let these people do what they did to our country when you knew otherwise? You knew better." And so I'm speaking out tonight for that purpose.
So before we move on, I want to recognize Wave, right? Whitey Kubuli advocates for viable environment with Margot LaRock, and he was part of it, and he was the president for a number of years. There are a number of people, I don't want to call names because there's a lot of folks, but Margot is forefront because she's a photographer. She does a lot of videos and photos of that, so I mentioned her name. We want to encourage people to go to Wave. Wave has a Facebook page because a lot of the protests and the education that's happening is happening because of Wave. They've been doing safaris, they call it safaris, to go to the different rivers to highlight construction and other activities that's taking place on the rivers. They've been doing that for years now. And when you see pictures of the rivers, they don't, some of them don't look like rivers anymore. They look like canals because they've extracted all the rocks from the river, from the channel of the river. And then you see different patterns of flow because you don't have the same obstruction and rules that those play. We our people need some leadership, and Wave is providing that. Nasir is not part of Wave, but an icon like Nasir, a treasure, putting himself at his stage and his popularity in the middle of that fight is admirable.
Let me
We
let me just say this because I know we're coming to an
Mhm.
end. Let me just say this: that even my ability to communicate about the historical aspect, the fact of the laws that were passed, the
Mhm.
Wildlife Act and or the
The
Forest Reserve
Forest
Act and
Reserve,
so on and what have you, and all of those that it was fundamental to what my legacy is. But I'm even receiving notes from even children of mine who think that, well, by you speaking out is going to have an effect upon us. It is one of those unfortunate situations where there's a fear syndrome that has been established that when you speak on a matter of principle, that it is misunderstood, that you are attacking the powers that be. And suffice it to say that whatever I contribute tonight is based upon the belief that the international airport is desirable, will be built, will be completed. But the methodology in which the structure of that airport has to depend upon the destruction of the environment is what I call in question. But I believe that the international airport is necessary and an absolute necessity in the mindset of people who for generations have been looking around them from the islands of Guadeloupe and Martinique and St. Lucia and St. Vincent and Barbados and you name it, St. Thomas and everywhere else, have an international airport, and we do not have one. So that's something that Dominicans want. That's something I fought for as a prime minister as well. In fact, I received an authority from the government of Venezuela to build one in the West Coast, as you did mention earlier. So I'm one of those that's pro airport, but certainly protective of the environment.
Yes, and that's the way to put it. Let's pivot and talk about the Kalinago people who suffered uh, so much from the excess rain. A few of them lost their homes. A few of them lost their farming, their lands, their livelihood, and so folks have been asking how they can contribute. Sam, I don't know if you have the
Yeah.
information
Well,
available
I,
for
I,
the
I
account.
would
There you
like to
go.
add my voice to this
Go
because
ahead.
I have been talking to persons who have interests in the territory as
Hmm.
well. One of which is, I think I can call her name, um, Douglas, Lucy Douglas's daughter, who was in touch with me and who have been in touch with the council for
Kalinago
the
Council.
chief, the Kalinago council for the chief. And we'd like to state that there are ways and means in which one who can contribute can make that contribution. There's a great need, as was expressed by the Kalinago chief recently, for assistance, for helping in different aspects of the damage that was done to people's homes, their lack of certain situations of their homes that could be assisted, and a list goes on. But one would have to get in touch with the Carib Council directly to get that information as to what can be shipped to the Kalinago territory. And of course, there is a bank coordination for the Carib Council that I have sent to you. So if
It's
you
up
don't
on the
mind,
screen right now. The
okay,
Kalinago
great,
Council, that's the account at the National Bank.
right.
It has the account number 100087141, and the SWIFT code is NCDM three times, D and M three times. D as in David, or D as in Dominica, M as in Mary. So you have N as in Nancy, C as in um, cat, and DM is the SWIFT code. The international banking code is NCDM, and the SOT code, SORT, the SOT code is 500080203. Just in case there are folks who are listening on the radio and not seeing the video, but also you can just contact us at TDN, and we will give you, we'll be able to share those coordinates with you. It's an account at the National Bank in the name of the Kalinago Council. So whatever contribution you make to that account will go directly to the council. And we've seen the Kalinago chief, who in essence is the chairman of the council. We've seen on her page that she is really in touch with her people. She's really assisting her people. She's really advocating for the Kalinago people. So I don't think anybody should have any concern that if they were to donate funds to the Kalinago Council, that it would not reach the people who need it. Because with whatever they already have, we've seen the demonstration that she is helping them out. So whatever you can do to assist, we are just advocating for them. You can send your funds directly into the account if you wish to contribute, and especially since most of the audience are in North America or in Europe on for this weekend interview, even if it's $10 you send, if 100 of you, because on a weekly basis maybe 6 to 7 thousand people see the episodes. So if half of you, 3,000 people or 2,000 people, each of you send $10, that is 20,000 US, which multiplies to over 50,000 EC dollars. That would give a big boost to the Kalinago Council in terms of what they can do to help to assist folks to climb out of that unfortunate incident that happened. So, OJ, thank you to you and to Miss Debbie Douglas, for coming to us with asking us to use the platform to show people how they can contribute if they wish to contribute. And I'm going to ask you to make a few closing
Absolutely,
remarks. Yeah.
absolutely. Of course, I'm very pleased that you give us the opportunity to announce the potential for people assisting on the facility by which they could contribute to the Kalinago people. They are our first citizens. They are the indigenous peoples of Dominica, and they deserve support at this stage of their situations. I recall during Hurricane David and other periods, people responded to them, and we can do the same right now in the moment of need. It is not political. It is whether you are with a good heart to your first inhabitants of our country, Waiti Kubuli, and whether we love our people, as we express so many times, we need to do that now and help them in their need for resuscitation of their lives, as they were affected very badly by this climate change experience that they went through. This, I say, will be to the advantage of the spirit of the people that came to this island first before we are brought in from Africa. May God bless them.
OJ, if you have any other closing remarks about anything else that we spoke about, this is the time.
No, well, all I'll say is this, that we have a job to do, which is to inform, consider the fact that we can't do these things that we plan to do by ourselves, that we must seek the godly experiences of knowledge, that we need to connect with the Almighty God, with the Spirit of the Most High, to accept the word of Jesus as He left us behind with the Holy Spirit, and we should continue to believe that all is going to be just as God has planned it. And despite the moments when we have concerns, that once we pray and we are consistent in our prayer, we shall see results. And this I claim in Jesus' name.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I thank you for coming on the program and for speaking out. And a lot of folks are of the opinion that if we speak out, there might be consequences to us and to our family. But for the last several years, we have proven that staying silent is not an option either, because the the mismanagement of the country's resources continues even if we're silent. So if we want to preserve Dominica for the future, not to keep us in having a hard life for folks that we're carrying load on our head, and there's no vehicles and that sort of
Well, of
thing.
course, Mr.
But
Drago, the point about it is that airport will be completed, you know, and we are not here trying to announce any departure from the concept, the idea of the implementation of the entire program. But of course, the cost is high, but nevertheless, its rate has reached, and all we can do is pray for its completion.
well, it would be a shame for us to have expended so much in terms of our resources and not end up with a working output. But I'm an engineer. I have 35 years in construction. I've constructed major projects, and I am not as confident as you that the project will be completed. I'm not saying it won't. I'm just saying I'm not as confident as you, because projects like that are so complex, and we did not see the planning go into the project that normally would be required on a project of that
Well,
magnitude.
you're the professional.
Uh,
I'm the
uh,
optimist,
yes,
and so
and
you
so
know,
I am hopeful that now that we've cut down a mountain and the country has expended so much in terms of environmental and other expensive resources, I would say I would love to see it complete. I'd love to see it operational. It's too late for me to say, let's stop it and go do it somewhere else. That would not make sense.
right.
We've already taken over a whole village. We've already cut down whatever mountains. We've already affected waterways, our beaches, lost so much topsoil. I think right now anybody that says that they hope the international airport doesn't come to fruition it would be a little crazy because it's not as if we can recover what we've already lost. But
Precisely.
but I must say, from a professional point of view, maybe the people that are doing it are smarter than me. They're more capable than me. Maybe they have endless deep pockets. Because with enough money, you can do anything. But I am just saying that from the way it is proceeding, it seems like it's a tough hill to climb to get to an operating project at the end. Um, I would be happy to buy a ticket and fly into Dominica on international. They can name it,
As so many Dominicans, out
and
there.
they should name it after Oliver Seraphin International Airport.
I don't think I have the authority over the gentleman who is in charge. However, I
Uh,
must say this though,
uh,
that we are at a point where we need to listen to our own experts, not only for this program of the airport and or for what's up that at Debonch, but for other things, including the use of our water for the benefit of Dominicans.
yes, and we have a civil engineer, local Dominic. He works in the U.S. He's built airports all over the U.S. and in other parts of the world. Young man, younger than me. He actually has an aviation license. He trains commercial pilots. He's also a civil engineer. He's worked and built multiple airports. But obviously, no consultation is done with local people who have local knowledge. Hence, we see some of the challenges that we probably could have avoided if we talked to local people. We experience that all the time. You see videos of people who live along the roadside that told they on video saying, "I told the guys when it rains, here turns into a river, so you need a bigger culvert and you need a little more infrastructure to accommodate the water." But they ignored the people that live there. They build the usual small drain, and then we have something like what happened, and that entire area of the road turns into a river. So one of the things that we have to do is to start to trust ourselves, and as you said, our experts. And we have a lot of young people who have gone out and studied and created the expertise and are eager to participate in the development of the country, but they don't get the opportunity to participate.
Okay, I'm just butting by saying that I'm getting some feedback here from other connections that I have, and it is appearing that they are not quite able to get connected to you to our program, and they would like to know if there is going to be some of that same program online
Yes.
that you could get to later on. If you could
So
advise.
so the program will be on This Week in Interview Facebook page. We have a Facebook page. It's always on there, and it will be on TDN Radio Facebook page. We also have YouTube channels. This Week in Interview has a YouTube channel. TDN Radio has a YouTube channel. And so they will be able to go back and look at past episodes in there. As well as if you go on tdntv.net, you can access all our conversations, more than 10 years of conversations with everybody um, that have been lucky enough to talk to on this program. But I'm going to cut it out here and say, OJ, good night. Thank you for sharing this hour and a half with me. I really appreciate your time. I really appreciate your knowledge and the generous way and the candid way in which you share your information. Is definitely a blessing that Dominica has, to have people like you yourself, who is so rich with the knowledge, and still you're blessed with impeccable memory because you recall the stuff like they happened last week, and for that we are grateful for your great help. So I'm just going to flash through some of the links that where the programs can be seen. uh, so there is a YouTube channel, both this TDN and this week in interview. There is what is this other one? Okay, so all of this is you. Okay, so it's YouTube. All right, but you can also go on the Facebook page and get them. They stay on there for a while. So OJ, thank you so much, and good evening to you. And we want you back. Every time I have a program with you, I get a lot of feedback. Bring OJ back. Bring OJ back. So I have no doubt you will be back. And folks, some put the information up for the Kalinago the account. We encourage you to support them and to help them. The Kalinago Council, their bank account at at the National Bank is on there. So make a contribution. It goes directly into the account. And so I'm going to say good night, folks, and I will see you again next week, Wednesday, for another episode of This Week in Interview with another very interesting guest. Before I go, though, I want to, I'm going to try to remember to make it a habit to encourage you, if you live in Dominica and you have not gone to re-register yourself on the voters list, to do that. I want to encourage every single person who lives in Dominica and is 18 years or older to go register to vote. Don't say that you voted in the last 10 elections so you know you're on there. No, remember they're starting the list from scratch. So you need to go to register yourself so that when the election comes, whether it's village council election or national elections, you will be able to exercise your right to vote. Uh, please, please, please. And if you don't live in Dominica like me, put it on your Facebook page, call people whenever you talk to anybody who lives in Dominica, encourage them to go and re-register themselves on the voters list, because that's the only way that we can ensure that our voice is heard in the selection of who will manage the economy and the resources of Dominica. So go out there and register to vote. I will try to get some additional information in terms of the different constituencies, and where you would go to do it, and what you require and what you need. It's available. So don't take that as an excuse. Don't wait for me before you go. The process is already halfway through. We have until October to register. So go and register. From what I understand, we expect to have maybe 40, 50,000 eligible voters in Dominica. After 6 months of registration, only 4,000 people have made it on the official list of electors. That's not good. 4,000. So we're only 10%, and we've burned for 50% of the time. So we have a lot of catching up to do, a lot of ground to make up for. So please, 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 let's change that. Get the momentum, accelerate that, go and register to vote. That's it. I'm not saying anything else. And good night, folks. It was a pleasure to be on. Thank you to my guest, Mr. Oliver Seraphin. Good night.